Hello, I'm Sora Luxon, and this is Tarot Card Video 6 of Pentacles, ruler of material success, who reigns as the moon within Taurus from the 10th to 20th degrees. You have to reflect on that momentarily. This is Luna within the bowl, the Lord of Luna within the bowl. This is the card of balance as a matter of fact, of beauty, of compassion, of integration. And it happens to be, I believe, personally, one of the most misexplained cards in all of the sacred tarot, generally by the uninformed. It's one of my pet peeves that the Six of Stars is passed forward in a way, as well-meaning as it may be, that really obfuscates its greater significance. The sixes, remember, bring us into communication with Tipperet and the Tree of Life, the Sephirah of Tipperet. So the movement we acknowledge through them is one of definites. It's a definite card, a thing, an action, an energy being matter of factly carried out in the sixes. In this case, specific to the earth suit, the earth pentacles, so success and gain of the material being accomplished. Look to the scales of justice and measure fair. Look where they are in the plane of the card visually. Look where they are in the pattern of the golden coins. Think of the greater mystery of Zeus, of Charostasia. Be weary enough of the misinterpretations of gain and give to settle instead on balance, which is the much deeper truth. We do get what we give. That's a law of magic. That's, the principle of give and take. So there is both giving and receiving in this card, yes. But it needs to be acknowledged that this card of the glorious six-star is one of the single most misinterpreted by the unwise in all of cartomancy. Very often, people come to the sacred tarot, which is wonderful. However they come to it, it's wonderful. I'm not judging people coming to the tarot and not knowing more than they do on their path until they're ready to. But often they come to it and then they start speaking about it or thinking they can teach it without the significance of an authentic, energetic practice, without the experience behind them, without the great mysteries playing a part in their very well-meaning but woefully shallow work with the craft. And so then this is something they maybe read in a book that this card means, or heard someone else say on the internet that this card means, or maybe they Googled an image of it and looked for key terms. They pass that shallowness forward and forward and forward, which, again, don't get me wrong, this is one of the wonderful things about the occult that helps reserve the sacred teachings for the genuine truth seekers. But it also just makes an extra mess. It obfuscates, it confuses, it creates all these roadblocks for authentic truth seekers along the way if, say, the internet at the moment is their only safe access or avenue into beginning their work objectively with deciding what these things mean for themselves. That being said, my tarot explanations are not intended as some unreproachable truth to be accepted. Far from it. Within true occultism, anyone listening to this is going to have the self-respect to challenge everything I say, to interpret for themselves everything I might have an opinion of, which they know that constant challenging, that constant questioning, that constant doing the work themselves to then create frames of reference. They know that that's a form of respect, not just to them, but to me. To challenge me is to respect me. The high occult and all those who seek to authentically practice it are given your respect when you do not accept things by rote, and when you do not pass along with words that which you do not yourself take the time to choose to comprehend. So now that we've framed that out as fully as possible, my little guidepost videos along the path of the Motley Fool, this divine journey of the tarot, they're an occult insight from a practicing occultist for practicing occultists, rather than what a majority of tarot readers, like quote unquote tarot readers, might say or do. The symbols and strength of the great work of the true mysteries can never be diminished. They can never be devalued. It can't be overlooked. And the Six of Pentacles is not a charity card. It is not the generosity card. So let's get into that. This is a nobleman, generally a giver of gifts. Sure, yes, maybe, but not always. All you have to do is look at the 3 personages on the card to understand that not everyone is receiving here. This is a person of pretty high rank in their community, often someone who has the power over people to make choices that will bestow them with grace or not. So a ruler in some way. Usually rendering services or being able to do very useful favors rather than gifts. This is the card of the beautiful favor. So that could be a present, but it isn't always. The favor is the 6-star upright, and it has to do with an even hand. Being fortunate has given them power. That's what the main figure has here. Power that we see being employed liberally, fairly, but not across the board. It's not as if they're giving alms to the poor passively to everyone. They're not even giving alms to the poor. If you take the time to look at the symbols, they have the power to now have this ability to give back in a meaningful way. But they're choosing who to give back to. So if this is someone who's an employer, they're likely able to give back to their community in that way by employing others. If this is someone who's an employee instead of an employer, they likely support those around them in the workplace because they are being well valued for their work and are receiving the just dues they deserve, the support they deserve. So they can in turn afford to support others around them, perhaps take the time to teach others around them or to help in some way. But again, that's not about charity. This is a card of balance. This is a card of harmonized forces. So this is going to be someone who places value on fairness, kindness, yes, but not in the way we often interpret that word. This isn't about charity. It's not overwhelmingly about generosity at all. It's about fairness, equality, justice, equitable will. Fairness is going to matter a great deal to this individual. Good fortune, and then the ability to harness it in a unified way with clear and decisive boundaries. And again, an even hand, a steady hand. And the steady hand is not always giving. Sometimes it's taking. But having that has allowed them to hone a sense of justice. Not just generosity, but just generosity. Giving where giving is due. And notice, this isn't a royal card. This isn't an effect inherited in some form of legacy or from the 4 poles of power. This is a success generated in the material on this individual. So it's very likely that their great good success comes from some form of business or earthly resource. But whatever the source, the rewards that they have already received and are now able to externally bestow because they have already internalized them, they were received in a just way. They're well earned, leaving the recipient in such a secure position that they, this noble, can then afford to be kindly in a stable way. Words like balance, justice, harmony, equality, they are pivotal to this card. Is there generosity here? Sure. Is there a form of charity here? Yes, in a lesser way. But this is a card of expansion and restriction together, being displayed together. One is receiving, one is not. The giver is also already a receiver, and they're choosing where to give. It's not just everyone. And it really isn't a charity card in the sense I hear a lot of people, I don't know where they get these interpretations of the tarot, but they aren't based in the higher mysteries and the symbolism of the craft. But they'll say things like, oh, this is a charity card where if you ask for something, you're likely to get it. Go ahead and ask for help from others. See yourself also as the beggar, because you are going to receive alms or a donation or funding in some way. It just isn't that. The Six of Stars is not that. Nor is it meant to be interpreted as if you are receiving some kind of donation or gift, or that you're going to, or that you should be giving and gifting to others because you have so much to gift and give. This isn't that kind of generosity, and it isn't just a wealth and riches positivity card either. One of my greatest pet peeves is when people talk about the Six of Pentacles being this generosity card and label it that way, define it that way over and over again. The noble shown here, and again, look to the head, look to the halo, look to the tiara, the crown, the third eye. We know this is a noble person. We look to the colors and their meaning to be interpreted. They have the authority of a generative power because of their functioning harmony with themselves and those around them, both internally and externally. As within, so without. This person is not being judgmental as they give, but they are also not being disrespectful as they choose where their resources are meant to be. He and Tipperet is a matter of fact success. It's a matter of fact success on the material plane in earthly ways. It's not all about giving everything away in some unbalanced manner or indefinitely and spontaneously receiving some sort of a small short-term gifting or funding, investment, donation. This is a card of matter of fact, already established material success. That is what the Tree of Life tells us. The balance in its upright form that is generated when it is carried forward rightly. Now, there is more to material gains and success than just wealth, just earthly resources of money. You have to remember these resources come in many forms. You may be wealthy in time. You may be wealthy in vital earth energy, health, life energy, physical plane insights and inspirations, those ideas that are imbued to us as we are within the mortal coil, or some other earth-based resource that is available here, again, under the constraints of the purely temporal and physical plane. And that might be what you have to justly, equitably choose where to share in a balanced way with others for the just welfare of self and other. But don't get it confused. This is not a card of receiving alms. Not everyone on this card is getting coins. And the assumption that these people are begging rather than bringing forward just reason for reward is another assumption. So interpreting it that way is a misunderstanding of the occult scales. The great scales of Ma'at is not some minor costume accessory here. So ignoring them to talk about generosity and charity and how you should get gifts or give more is ridiculous. The weigher of hearts cares not at all for what we may delusionally perceive from within the perspective of our mortality as necessity or hardship. The scales have never cared about that. The scales don't care if you're poor or wealthy. It is the act of balance which resonates authentic harmony, the ability to accept just reward, and actual significant humbleness of spirit is part of that harmony, as is the ability to choose where to bestow grace and where not to. So this is not the polarized interpretation of generosity and poverty and be the beggar, be the rich person. Are the givers and receivers here a metaphor of balance? Yes, of course they are. That's a surface interpretation. Is this card symbolically telling you that you might be the beggar about to receive something like a present? No. The sixth Sephira of balance, compassion, integration, and divine beauty doesn't care about the status of your earthly dross. The balance of giving and receiving here is one of much deeper merit. Again, expansion and retention, giving and receiving, all in one place, already recognized in balance. Tiferet is where conflicting forces, such as giving and receiving, on and off, give and take, black and white, both are already harmonized, so that manifested divine energy, creation itself, now has the authority to flow forth where it's meant to be. What to do with the Six of Pentacles upright? Whatever you're doing it well. Keep it up. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that this is a great time to earn even more, to help and cherish others even more. This isn't a card about helping others. Can you afford to? Yes. Should you? Always. That's not what this card is about. Are there gains to be made in trade and commerce, in creature comforts, in wealth, in business, success in general? The risk is low, so feel empowered by your current, well-balanced stability to do what you like. Sure. All of that, fair enough. But for those with the ears to hear, think of the scales. Reversed. In the Six of Pentacles reversed, instead of generosity and power's influence used for the valuing of others, we see it abused in order to devalue them. And again, we're not just talking about generosity of giving someone coins. We're talking about the generosity of spirit that takes the time to understand who needs those coins and who does not. That here becomes very unbalanced. In the reversal, it's imbalanced in order to devalue people. Hidden agendas are going to show up. Sucking up to people is going to show up. That's a power play, a power dynamic that's become unbalanced. If there is some sort of gift or support given, which is not what this card is all about, but if that is here in the situation of your querent, perhaps the querent is you, keep in mind that it is going to come with strings attached, possibly completely invisible strings that will come forward to keep the recipient dominated or submissive in an unhealthy and an unbalanced way later. At the very least, the person who's being given something here or is having something taken in some way is going to end up under a toxic influence, an unbalanced relationship power play. An individual possibly will have a great deal of power over them. If there is any generosity, it's being employed as a form of abuse or a control mechanism. There may even be a form of extortion involved, because when these short-lived earthly material gains take hold over the self, things like that, they start to rear the ugly heads. Inequality, all sorts of material disparities. So before we had equality, now we have inequality. Before we have justice, now we have injustice. This is an individual that might tend towards selfishness, but even more so is probably thinking of themselves as being better than others or worse than others based solely on material criteria of no real quality, like the weight of their wallet or their status in public. There's insolence here as well in this reversal, where the Earth Pentacle of, Tifret's compassion, not giving, but compassion, becomes instead extremely arrogant, very rude to those who have less or more, judgmental of them, often hubristic. They may even go so far as to center their identity, fixate how they see themselves, their own value, based solely on, again, material constraints, things like wealth, status, seeing those things as their only valuable defining characteristics. Imprudence, extravagance, wastefulness, you're going to find that here. Instead of, smart investments given rightly, there's likely prodigal choices being made, unthrifty choices and behaviors. But not unthrifty in the sense of, instead of giving my money to the poor, I'm spending it on luxury items. Again, what we're talking about here is the divine scales. So rather than giving just reward where it's due with the stable hand of grace, instead, here in the reversal, you'll find the great injustice of those who are deserving not receiving, and of those who aren't being given far too much. Disdain for people of perceived lesser or greater, status, unfairness, injustice. And since this is the card of beautiful favor turned on its head, there's going to be a tendency here to not reciprocate in fair or equal measure any support that's being rendered onto someone. So if you've given a favor, this would be the card in its reversal that tells you that favor isn't likely to be returned. Or perhaps that you aren't being balanced in where you bestow your favors. You might not be giving them to the most deserving in the room. What to do with the Six of Pentacles reversed? I could repeat all of the things that people who misjudge this as a charity and generosity card in a very shallow form would say, right? If this is your first and foremost, take a break from business. This isn't the time for business. You're making a complete mess of it anyway. Don't take any big risks. Worry about cleaning up small debts before investing in other things, especially things that don't make sense. For those with the ears to hear, if in some way you are the querent and you have had the Six of Stars reverse leap to your fingertips, beware the quid pro quo in yourself and in others. It's time to become more mindful of as within, so without. And that has to do with making just judgments. Also, look to where you may be being resentful, having biased opinions of others, especially biased opinions attached to the material plane. Overzealous luxuries will incur energetic dissipations. And I'm not talking about overspending money on something silly rather than giving it to the poor. Overindulging rather than mindfully, consciously sharing will have your current material gains, whatever they may be, flowing away from you wicked quick. If someone is keeping you in a toxically submissive or maybe dominantly. They force you to be the dominant. Constrained position on either side of the scale. An unhealthy imbalance within a relationship rather than a balanced partnership. Become aware of it. Look to it, find it, and start gaining the space necessary for mental clarity so that you can begin to allow for the creation of a healthy balance. Until next time.